The Lobster is a film by Yorgos Lanthimos that takes place in a dystopian society in which the seemingly only thing of importance and the only thing that gets you in trouble is being a single individual not in a relationship. What are some of the themes? Conformity. All the characters in the film, whether they are a part of the companion society or a part of the loner society in the forest, have to conform to the expectations in either of those societies by either getting into a relationship or by utterly abstaining from any form of relationship. So there is an entire kind of black and white theming. That is initially set up in the interview question that Colin Farrell's character has an interview when he goes to the hotel to find a new relationship. Instead of being labeled as bisexual, as the lady states, that option is no longer available. He has to choose between either being gay or straight, which he chooses straight, despite leaning partially towards being gay. That we'll get into a little bit later. In the society of companionship, the characters all have to have a trait that they share in order to be in a relationship. That is something that is given paramount importance. For example, it seems like the relative trait that Colin Farrell and his wife shared was that they both wore glasses, but that could have been for different reasons. She could have been farsighted. This will be important later. Also, the only thing that we get as an understanding of what happened to Colin Farrell's relationship is a question that he poses to her asking if the other person that she is leaving him for wears contacts. That also will become important later. So, one of the themes is conformity. Another theme is lying. Colin Farrell's character habitually engages in lying to get by in both societies. When he is about to get turned into an animal because he has a few days left to find a partner and he's failed to do so, he begins to lie to a psychopathic woman. And I think there are a lot of motivations for this. The primary motivation is that his former relationship was supposedly born out of a very common trait. I assume it was that they both wore glasses and that she got contacts, so they lost that thing to be in common any longer. That's my assumption. So by pursuing the psychopathic woman, Colin Farrell is ensuring that there are very few other people that would be able to have a similar trait of psychopathy for that woman so that he would not have any sexual competitors. That is also, I think, the reason why he does not pursue the woman who is incredibly desperate to get with him, because she wants to find any trait that they share in companionship for their relationship. And that would not be a relationship that would last, because if it were something like we both have a left hand, well, almost every person has that. So if that was the trait, then they would have a very bad relationship, as dictated by the society. Over the course of the film, there are kind of indoctrination conferences that reinforce the idea of getting into a relationship as a form of protection for your life and for your sexual autonomy, to a degree anyway. So, Colin Farrell pursues a relationship with a psychopathic woman because they will be less sexual competitors for her affection, and that he thinks that he can perform the act of being a psychopath, and that performance presents itself to him. A woman kills herself, and he approaches and says, "Oh, I hate her screaming." And he uses his denial of a desperate woman to pursue a harder to relate to woman. So he's, in essence, a little manipulative there. What happens in the relationship is that eventually she tests if he is really like her by killing his dog. And his dog is actually his brother, who failed to find a person to be in a relationship, and he got turned into a dog. So she kills his dog, and he tries so desperately to hold it in that he says that he just needs to go to the bathroom and wash his hands. But then he starts crying, and at that point she discovers that he has been lying to her, and that engages in a pursuit where he, with the assistance of one of the maids, knocks out the psychopathic woman and then transforms her into, I believe, the worst animal, which we are not shown what the worst animal is. After that, Colin Farrell takes off into the woods to join the loners, and the loners are the people who the companion-seeking folk at the hotel have been hunting the whole time, and when they capture one, they get extra days on their stay to provide them a longer time to find companionship. So Colin Farrell goes out to the loners, and it turns out the loner society has just as strict rules about relationships as the companion society. The loners forbid any kind of relationship. They have punishments referred to as the red kiss and the red intercourse. The red kiss, we see, appears to be a kind of mask or a kind of face scarring beginning at the edges of the mouth and protruding towards the cheek, similar to that of Joker in the Dark Knight when he asks, "Do you want to know how I got these scars?" Eventually, Colin Farrell, not getting along in the companion society, also is not able to get along in the loner society and begins to pursue a relationship with Rachel Weisz. He gets her some rabbits, and they develop a commonality about being short-sighted. This is important. If you remember, we have the implication that the relationship with his wife ended supposedly because they both had glasses, and I think we can assume that she got contacts, and that's why they lost their thing in common and the relationship fell apart, given that Colin Farrell asks, does he have contacts? So Rachel Weisz and Colin Farrell engage in this relationship. He makes it very clear at one point, through a form of jealousy, that he wants to be her sole kind of person that she relies on, in a kind of moment about asking about rabbits and not having anybody else bring her rabbits. And one of the guys that assists her, he goes and accuses him of being nearsighted. And he just says he has bad eyesight. Because Colin Farrell is very insecure that the man that is bringing Rachel Weisz rabbits is also nearsighted, and then that they won't have that trait to be compatible anymore. He's very afraid of that. So it's important to note at this point that despite being out of the companion society, Colin Farrell's character is still pursuing relationships in accordance with the rules from the society that he could not get along in. I think that is one of the most interesting aspects of the film, and if I were to expand my analysis into any larger piece, that's what I would lean into. But instead, I'm going to focus more on the text of the material and not so much societal construction and how the film relates to societal control. And the society in the film is very black and white, so it makes it a little bit easier to analyze. So, Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz get found out, and Rachel Weisz is blinded. And this is a very, very cruel event. This is where the film becomes a Greek tragedy. And Yorgos Lanthimos loves Greek tragedies. He loves putting these kinds of things in his films. So, Rachel Weisz is blinded. Not just because that would be something that is akin to a Greek tragedy, and not because that is just a horrible thing to do, but because that for her, eye surgery is something that can be tempted the leader of the loner party tempts Rachel Weisz by coming into the city and saying, oh, we can fix your eyes because you know how much you've wanted that. And Rachel Weisz is apprehensive because, well, she would lose her trait compatibility with Colin Farrell's character, but that's something that she has said that she wanted. And she can't really turn this down anymore, because if she would, then that would indicate that she's in a relationship with Colin Farrell, because why would you just not want to go through with it? And another thing is that the loner leader has found Rachel Weisz's diary and discovered that that is something that they share in common. So the loner leader is trying to separate them by taking away the thing that they have in common. So it's funny that the loner leader also uses the methods of getting into a relationship from the companion society as a way to also divide them. She recognizes the effect that that society still has on people. So she blinds Rachel Weisz, and there's a moment where there's two scenes going on at once, and the film is like cutting between them. And one of them is Rachel Weisz is doing the touch feel game where she names things that she's feeling. And in that moment, Colin Farrell lies to her, and when she thinks that a tennis ball is a kiwi, and he says that it is, when we know it's a tennis ball. That scene is also cut with another scene where Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz are talking, and he's talking about German and all this other stupid shit. And it dawns on the audience, I hope, that he is probing for something that they can share in common, but it would take too long to achieve the German thing. He said, oh, it would take a year and you'd only be, partially good at it or something. So there's a kind of recognition that the relationship is falling apart, but Rachel Weisz's character does not seem to care that she's blinded anymore, in the blindiness ruining their relationship. It doesn't really seem to bother her, I don't think. She's very grateful, but I think that interpretation of her feelings about the relationship and lacking that trait compatibility kind of fall away. That's a little bit more of the subtext of her performance that I'm not really sure about. But Colin Farrell's character, this is the arc of the film, the last moment. So they run away. Colin Farrell kills the loner leader, and they go to companion society, and they're in a diner. And they have a vague conversation, and then Colin Farrell goes to the bathroom to seemingly pluck out his eyes. We need one more piece of evidence to kind of make a little bit sense of the ending. Previously, they had talked about going to Greece and enjoying the beach, something like that. So Colin Farrell is preparing himself to stab his eyes, and we cut to Rachel Weisz, who is sitting there, and her water is gone down quite a bit in her glass, and somebody refills it, and then she doesn't drink it, and we're watching for about like 30 seconds, and then the film cuts, and then we hear waves, sounds of the beach, and a song plays that I have been informed the title of the song that plays at the end is Greek for I love you. So to me, that seems to be pretty confirming evidence that he did blind himself and that they got to do the thing that they wanted to do. Another piece of evidence of that is that if he does not blind himself, then he has no arc. Because one of the things of the movie is that Colin Farrell's character lies constantly to get in relationships and to get along with the society that he's a part of. He lies to the loner leader about being able to be a loner and not want relationships. He lies to Rachel Weisz about the tennis ball. He lies to the psychopath about being a psychopath. And he was willing to do that to such an extent that he's willing to lie about his pure disgust and hatred and misery over losing his brother to this psychopath woman. He's willing to try to hide that. And I think part of that motivation comes from him seeing the nosebleed guy. There's a guy who fakes a nosebleed so that he can get in a relationship. And I think that's partly where his motivation comes to lie to the psychopath woman. And then there's a bit of an arc in that subplot in that they stage a raid on the companion hotel, and Colin Farrell goes to the yachts where nosebleed guy and nosebleed girl are, and he says, oh, his nose doesn't bleed. And the way Colin Farrell's character looks and the way you kind of expect things to go is that the woman is going to be upset at her new husband. But instead, she's upset at Colin Farrell, and he's essentially kicked off the boat, and he just says he'll leave, and he leaves the gun there. And then that's it. So, for evidence that Colin Farrell does not blind himself, I think that's part of it, that he saw seemingly a relationship working with lies. But as we know from the culture of the society in the movie, that the reason that they have a kid is because their relationship isn't working out. Because it's stated that if their relationship struggles, while they have a trait in common, they will be granted children, which is supposed to help them. And they already have a kid so soon in the relationship. And we know that they're fighting. So I think Colin Farrell's a little smarter than that. And I think that for the arc of the movie to exist, Colin Farrell has to stop lying. He has to blind himself to achieve any kind of arc. He has to become the person who has a trait compatible with Rachel Weisz. I think that's what happens. That seems to be the only kind of satisfactory kind of ending. And I'm not somebody who just... I like unsatisfying endings. I like dark endings. But I just don't really see it in this film. I think that for his character and everything that we're seeing, all the evidence points that that's what he goes through, that he does blind himself. So, I read online that somebody said that when the film cuts to black, the film's over and that's it. that was their Reddit R True Film analysis. And to anybody like that, I just want to say, why engage with art if you're not willing to look at the material and then speculate on meaning and purpose and how it relates to life? And if you're just going to say, well, when the screen turned black, I turned my brain off, it's a little boring. I don't know. Anyway, that's my understanding of the film.